Hey, stop scrolling for a second. What I'm about to show you today is one of the most important congregational movements I have covered on this channel. Not because it's flashy, not because it's dramatic, but because the numbers that actual documented numbers are that serious. We are talking about a fraud case out of Minnesota, $9 billion in false claims, 98 individuals already charged by the Department of Justice, and a sitting US Congressman, Andy Biggs, lying it all out in front of a formal House committee. And then there's Jamie Raskin's response. And honestly, his response is just as important as the evidence itself, maybe more so. I am Frank John and you are watching Joshu Reaction. I am pure real analyst. No spin, no agenda, no political side, just the facts laid out clearly so you can think for yourself. Let's get into it. Before we get to the clip and we'll start get there, I want to give you enough background so that when you are watching, you are actually understand what you are saying because this is the one of those stories where the numbers sound so big, people just kind of tune them out. And I don't want that to happen. So let's walk through what we actually know. This case centers on a federal food assistance program, money that was supposed to feed low income children meals, food distribution, that kind of thing. And according to federal prosecutors, a network of people submitted what the Department of Justice is calling false claims. In other words, they billed the government for food and services that were either massively inflated or, in some cases, allegedly never delivered at all. The total in disputed and false claims being cited $9 billion. Let the number sit for a moment. $9 billion. That's not a rounding error. That's a single bad factor. For a fraud to reach that scale, you need systems that fail, oversight that looked the other way, and a network of people who knew exactly what they were doing. The DOJ has charged 98 individuals in connection with this. Now, I want to be precise here. Being charged is not the same as being convicted. In this country, you are innocent until proven guilty. That's the law, and I respect that. But 98 charge counts from the United States Department of Justice is not a small enforcement action. That is a coordinated multi-year federal investigation that has now produced results. And now this case has landed in the halls of Congress. Congressman Andy Biggs, Republican, Arizona, brought this before a House committee, and what he laid out and what happened next is exactly what we are reacting today. One more thing before we roll the clip. A lot of people are going to ask, why is this coming up now? And that's a fair question. We are heading into 2026. There's been increased political pressure around government accountability, and oversight committees have been revisiting cases like this with fresh urgency. I'll touch on that more in the analysis. For now, let's watch. Alright, here we go. I'm going to play this and I'm going to pause it at a couple of key moments because there are specific things I want you to hear. Don't just watch, listen to the language being used. The specific word choices matters here. Ready? Okay, pause right there. You just heard that a sitting United States congressman in a formal House committee hearing used the phrase money laundering scheme. Now I want to be really clear about something. I'm not here to sensationalize that, but I'm also don't want to minimize it because context matters. That statement was not made in a podcast. It wasn't a tweet. It wasn't a campaign ad. That was made in a formal Congress proceeding on the record. That is the kind of venue where people choose their words very carefully because the record follows you. When a congressman says money laundering scheme in that setting, he's not doing it for clicks. He's making an allegation he prepared to back up with documentation. And when you look at what the DOJ has already charged 98 individuals, years of systematic false billing, the framework he's describing starts to line up with the actual charge. Again, allegations are allegation. The legal system will determine guilty, but what Biggs is doing here is drawing a line from federal charges to congregational accountability. That's his job. That is literally what oversight committees exist to do. Let's keep going. Hold on, I want to catch what just happened there. He didn't just say there's a fraud. He brought documentation, specific numbers. He walked through the mechanism, how the claims were filed, that program the money came from, and the gap between what was billed and what could actually be verified on the ground. That's significant, and because anyone can stand up and make accusations, but when you are presenting actual billing records, actual DOJ charge sheets, and asking how did this go unchecked for years. Now you are doing accountability work. That's a different conversation. And I'll tell you, this is the program that was alleged exploded here. This was federal money, taxpayer money. It wasn't some, of course, government budget line. That was money set aside specifically to feed kids. That's the context. That's what was alleged being manipulated. Let's see how the other side of the SLA responded. And there it is. Now, listen, I want to be fair to Jamie Raskin here because I think fairness matters more than getting a reaction out of you. Raskin is a sharp guy. He's been in these hearings a long time. He knows how to respond. But watch what he did just now. Instead of addressing the specific dollar figures Biggs raised, instead of saying, here's where those numbers are off, or here's the oversight mechanism that actually caught this, he shifted the frame. He redirected to broader context, to other examples, to what the other side has or hasn't done. That's a technique. And again, I'm not calling it dishonest. Politicians do this all the time on both sides. But the question you should be asking yourself is, why not just address the $9 billion directly? Why not say that number is inaccurate and here's why? When the specific evidence on the table doesn't get a specific rebuttal, that's at all not proof of anything but a tell. I have watched hundreds of these hearings over the years, and the responses that actually diffuse a serious accusation are the ones that go fact by fact. That figure is wrong because of X. That program had Y safeguards. Here's the audit trail. That's how you actually counter evidence. What we saw here wasn't that. You can disagree with my read on that, and I would love to hear your take in the comments, but that's what I observed. Let's zoom out now because this story doesn't start and end in Minnesota, and it doesn't start and end with these 98 individuals. The bigger question, and this is the one that genuinely matters for everyday Americans and Canadians watching this, is how does a fraud at this scale go undetected or at least unaddressed for years? We are not talking about someone skimming a few $1,000s of a petty cash account. We are talking about a systematic pattern of false claims inside a federally funded program. For that to go on for years, you need more than one bad actor. You need gaps in reporting, in auditing, in the chain of accountability between the federal agency that sends the money and the loyal organizations that receive it. And this is where it connects to you whether you are sitting in Ohio or Ontario. When federal money gets misused at this scale, it doesn't just disappear. It crowds out funding for things that do work. It creates pressure on budgets that eventually trickle down to state and local levels. And it erodes trust in public programs that a lot of people genuinely depend on. Now, some people watching this are going to use the words racketeering or frame this as some kind of organized crime operation. I have seen those takes online, and I'm going to be straight with you. I'm not using that language because I'm not a lawyer, and those are serious legal distinctions. What I will say is this: when you have 98 charged defendants, coordinated false billing, and a pattern that span years across multiple organizations, that is not random. That is not coincidence. That is what federal prosecutors would call a scheme. That the fact that the DOJ pursued this aggressively enough to produce 98 charges tells you they believe they have the evidence to prove it. And here's what I think a lot of people miss when they see stories like this. This isn't a Democrat problem or a Republican problem. Government program fraud is a systematic problem that has existed across administrations of both parties for decades. The real accountability question isn't whose party did this happen under, it's what changes so it doesn't happen again. That's what oversight is supposed to produce, and that's what we are watching play out imperfectly, messily, politically right now. All right, I want to stop and actually talk you for a second, not at you to you. I have been doing this channel long enough to know that what I cover something like this, I'm going to hear a range of opinions. Some of you are going to say Biggs is completely right and this is exactly the kind of accountability we need. Some of you are going to say this is political threat time to embarrass the other party, and some of you, and I genuinely respect this, are going to say you need to see more before you form an opinion. All of those are valid starting points. What I did push back on is anyone on any side who sees this and just immediately confirms what they already believed without actually engaging with the facts. So here's I want from you in the comments. First, what's your read on Raskin's response? Was he legitimately trying to provide context, or was he running interferences? I want your actual analysis, not just he's terrible or his was right. Break it down from me. Second, and this one's importantly, if you think the $9 billion figure is being misrepresented or taken out for context, tell me how. I'm serious. I'm not asking that sarcastically. If there's nuance in that number I haven't addressed, I want to know. Drop the source, drop the breakdown. Let's look at it together. That's what this community is for, because at the end of the day, the whole reason this channel exists is so that we regular people, not lobbyists, not party operatives, can look at the facts together and figure out what's actually going on. And that only works if you actually engage. So go ahead and hit the comments. I read them, I respond when I can, and I take good pushback seriously. Here's where I'll leave you today. And Andy Biggs presented in that hearing is serious. The DOJ charges are real. The dollar figures are documented. Whatever you think of politics around it, those facts stand on their own. What happens next in the courts, in Congress, and in the public conversation is going to matter. And we are going to keep following this as more comes out, as more charges move forward, as we get more information on the oversight failures that allowed this. We'll be covering it right here, chapter by chapter. If you want honest, fact-based analysis of US politics, no shouting, no agenda, no spin, then subscribe to this channel. Generally, every subscription helps us keep the lights on and keep doing this work. And if you got something out of today's video, share it with someone who think needs to see it. Not to convince them of anything, just to give them the facts and let them decide. I am Frank John. This is Joshu Reaction. Stay sharp, stay informed. Talk soon. Take care. Bye bye. Peace.